Have you ever wondered how social media data could shape investment decisions in this rapidly evolving world of crypto and beyond? Well, today I'm joined by Joe Vasani, the visionary co-founder of a company called LunarCrush, and they are a pioneering social media analytics firm making waves in the crypto space. And Joe's journey from finance and advertising to leading a company that aggregates social media data to provide invaluable insights for investors is nothing short of inspiring. So today I want to find out more about the origin story of LunarCrush, explore their innovative platforms, and also discuss any potential future trends that Joe sees on the horizon. So whether you are an investor or a tech enthusiast or just simply curious about the intersection of social media and finance, today's episode promises to offer a wealth of insights and inspiration. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Joe's waiting to talk with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Hey, Neil, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Joe Vasani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of LunarCrush, and we are a social media analytics firm in the crypto space is where we started, but we have expanded out to stocks and all the rest of the fun categories that we hold. But our mission is to create transparency on the internet. And so right now we're focused on social media and the kind of crazy world that is social media content and all the mentions. And we really try to make sense of that for investors. And so, someone's out there mentioning, Bitcoin 1 million times an hour. How are you supposed to understand what's happening in that world and what's moving the markets when, you're just one person with one feed trying to ingest that? And so we aggregate all that data and try to make it simple for people and put it into digestible insights for them to understand the markets in better detail.
It's incredibly cool what you're doing there. And one of the things I always try and do with my guests is take them back in time. I'd love to find out more about your origin story. So can you share your journey that led to you co-founding LunarCrush and ultimately what inspired you to venture into the Web3 space and go on this journey that you're on? Because I got a feeling there's got to be a story there somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's always a story with the entrepreneur that, makes a leap. Mine started, I came out of university in 2008 and I wanted to go work on Wall Street. That was, my dad was a mortgage banker and, I always kind of felt finance was the direction I was going to go. And, like March of 2008, I'm coming out of school trying to get a job on Wall Street and, Lehman Brothers specifically is where I wanted to go work. And, sure enough, like that bank doesn't exist a couple months after, I come out of school. And so I end up trying a couple of different things and, found actually, advertising in the creative world. And, as someone that was, so heavily finance oriented, I didn't want to take the job at first. Right. And my dad was like, take anything. It's just, the sky is falling. And, usually out of school, it was like, if you go to New York City and you're an investment banker, you can make 6 figures out of school. You can get 100 grand a year. And I think, the first job I had was like in the 30s. Right. And so I was like, wake up call, like, this is where the world is at. And, but ended up loving that industry. And, that was kind of my first taste of, there's so much more out there that's out of your control. But at the end of the day, you are 100% in control in your future and your destiny and what you want to build. And it just kind of always stuck with me, this idea that, I have a direction that I want to go and there's a vision and a future I see for myself. And because of these outside forces, that I couldn't control, it kind of rugged me. It came up and pulled the rug out from underneath me. And so I, said, I want to live in a world where that, can't happen again. And so just, over the course of my early career, I wanted to work at, some bigger companies and understand the way that the corporate world worked, being, 22 and coming out of school. I always kind of said, I wish they would have taught more classes, on how to use like a copy machine and like Xerox 101, it's like you're just doing like nothing in those early days except for just kind of figuring out the ropes. And I always tell young people coming out of school that, it's like, hey, like pump the brakes a little bit, like figure out what you like, figure out what you're good at. If you don't know exactly what you want to do, everyone thinks they're going to come out of school and it's just, they're Mark Zuckerberg or someone that just knows exactly what they want out of life, but like no one has any idea. And most of us don't. We just kind of figure it out as we float through. But you stay passionate, you stay curious. So for me, it was always, even if I was at an organization, I was always curious and, would ask a lot of questions. Hey, what do they do over there in that creative department that I have no idea what they do over there? They're like, oh, they're making, television spots or radio or billboards at the time, or, which was out of home. And, so for me, I was like, oh, okay, I think I want to figure out how to get to like the revenue portion of a business, versus when I was in like the proverbial like mailroom. And so just kind of figured some stuff out there and kept that going throughout my early career. Did a stint at, a company called Owens Corning. I did sales, channel management. I was selling commercial and industrial insulation, which was an amazing job. I learned so much about pricing and different verticals and selling and what a Fortune 500 company did and how they worked. And then, eventually joined another startup called Lifeline Response, and it was a personal safety application. So it was kind of like a dead man switch on your phone. And spent a couple years there, did a Techstars program, and really that opened my eyes up to the world of startup. And, the minute I kind of stepped in the room with the other 10 companies that were there, I knew instantly, I was like, oh, these are my people. Like, this is what I'm meant to do, is to just kind of get in this arena here and just like punch my way out of it and figure out how I'm supposed to work in this world. And it was not so much about, I think, technology and software as much as it was just the spirit of building something brand new and a bunch of people taking some pretty serious risks in their lives and their family lives, and, people of all different ages, kids out of school, but then also up to kids that had, kids in high school. It's like, hey, how do you tell your wife when you've got, a mortgage and 2 kids and saving for college that, hey, I'm going to go start this thing over here. We're not going to have benefits for like a year and a half, So that was also a cool thing to see people doing that. And then, eventually ended up at an ad agency again. And this time, doing a lot more on the digital and UX side, user experience, having built now an app and working in software for a while, got a lot of passion for design. And, you find yourself, I always tell young kids, it's like, hey, if you're going to start something new, don't worry about what happens afterwards, because even if you fail, you're going to be years ahead of the people at your age of what they're working on. And so I kind of found myself in that scenario of, well, I passed a lot of people by here. I learned a lot. I'm going to excel here. But then it was, probably halfway into that role, my co-founder at the time was also working there, John. And he came up to me one day and he's like, hey man, he's like, you got any Bitcoin? And this was like January of 2015. And so, we read the Bitcoin white paper and we just talked about crypto and Bitcoin for like the next like couple of years. And that's all we could talk about. Got obsessed with like this solving of the double spend problem with Bitcoin, and realized this, once you kind of really internalize that and you have that aha moment, that bug bites you and you can never go back, right? Especially as someone that loved software, loved finance. It was like the intersection of these two things kind of happening in economics and like macroeconomics all at once. And so I became obsessed. And then, it was probably 2017, when Ethereum came out and this proliferation of tokens, we were like, wow, this is going to be maybe like the tokenization of everything. And, sure, probably most of the tokens that exist today will not exist into the future, but there's going to be many more in the future than exist today. And so when we're out there on places like Twitter trying to figure out, what are people talking about? There's just like millions of mentions of, at the time, like Vertcoin and Litecoin was big then, and like all these other crazy things. And how do you delineate, project number market cap 150 versus 25? Maybe project 150 has more social activity than number 70 right now. And does that create some sort of social arbitrage for people to potentially invest in something else? And so started aggregating that data, brought in, our other co-founder, Dan, and we're like, hey man, can you get this data? Can we figure this out? And then started to kind of create a product out of that. And, that was 5 years ago now, launching into the industry. So now I've been kind of owning and operating a business in the crypto space for half a decade, and it went by like a flash in some regards, and the others, it felt like a lifetime.
Incredibly cool, and I was getting flashbacks from some of them old coins that you were mentioning there, and of course here
Bitcoin private,
yeah,
got burned.
And obviously, fast forward to present day, you're one of the you're a top 200 website and a rapidly growing SaaS company. But of course, it's not all been plain sailing. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in scaling LunarCrush, and how did you overcome them? Because I would imagine there's quite a few stories there. There's been a lot of big changes, haven't they, over the last 5 years?
Yeah, the industry's changed a lot. I think it was probably around COVID when everyone started to become kind of an investor at home, and like the Robinhood kind of investor really started to grow. That was tailwinds in a way for us too, just people looking for that information and trying to understand more about cryptocurrencies. And so we started to see a lot of traction then. And, you just kind of take it in stride. You kind of listen to your customer, you listen to the market. What do people want to see? We just started with cryptocurrencies on the site and just, it's probably a couple thousand. Now we have tens of thousands, and we have stocks, and, we have NFTs, and we have, 29 other categories with sports and luxury brands and automotive, where we track everything that's happening on social media. And so you just kind of scale with your audience. We went through a couple of like major, massive periods of growth, in 21 and 22 when things were really rolling. And, there was one moment where, AWS called us, and, it was something along the lines of like, hey, your bill was like $1,500 a month, like for the last 6 months, like, yeah, your bill's going to be like $150,000 a month unless we do something here, just because the scale and traffic that was happening. And, then, Dan on our side basically like, just goes into a hole and puts his headphones on and like codes his life away for 24 hours. And suddenly Amazon's like, hey, like you fixed this before, we didn't even have a meeting scheduled yet. And like, how did you fix that? Do you have a team of like 100 over there? And we're like, no, it's just like one person. We're a startup. They probably just like didn't need for a day. But, you just like, as a founder, you just got to push through. And, I always kind of tell people, it's, startups sometimes like the best day of your life and worst day of your life over and over and over again. And if you're not kind of willing to exist in that world, then you're going to have a much harder time being successful, depending on kind of the idea, the project, and the product that you're working on. And so, yeah, you just, kind of being a second time founder here, I'd say I've kind of smoothed out the bumps a little bit as I've gotten a little bit older, just because of the way that you take news as you get older, like, oh, we can fix this, but you do have to be, I think you have to be an optimist to potentially be pretty successful, just because things go wrong constantly. And if you're internalizing those and, saying these things are like your fault, and, you could have a hack on a bridge somewhere in crypto, which is something that recently happened and has nothing to do with, you personally, but like people are affected. And so you just have to go into action to fix it and triage that and move forward and constantly keep pushing and innovating and not let that disrupt the underlying plans. It's a bunch of battles, but, you're fighting a war.
And your latest platform, LunarCrush Earn, is aiming to connect brands and creators in the creator economy. And just to bring to life some of the things we're talking about here, can you elaborate on how the platform works and the value that you're bringing to both brands and its creators?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so what we do really well at scale is we aggregate all of the social data from places like X and TikTok and Reddit and YouTube. And so we know how many interactions and upvotes and comments and likes that you're getting on your handles from these platforms. And so we've used that data traditionally to help people understand, the communities and the groundswell of community around different investments. And, we've expanded that out to understanding more about all topics and any searchable topic on social media. And so, we think a pretty bullish use case for that data, is this world of brands and creators and the creator economy and, independent journalism that's out there. And, that market's growing rapidly, and news is broke on X, right? Like, if you watch CNN or Fox News or BBC or anything out there, there's news that's broke. All you're seeing is a subject matter expert or a leader and like the tweet next to them that they said, right? And so it's like they're just repurposing the thing that was already said by that person. That news already happened, right? And so, for us, we kind of go out there and crawl the internet in that same way to understand where those things are, how they're happening, but we know at what scale. And so as these creators have gotten so much more, I would say, not control, but so much more influence, influencers, creators that they have on social media, we wanted to be able to reward those people for the audiences that they've built independently. And, the brands are out there looking for creators that are like-minded for their brand and they think will represent their brand well. But traditionally, the way that transaction worked was a brand would have to go out and, hire a couple influencers, and, it was like an awareness campaign. It was like a billboard. hey, we're going to hire Kim Kardashian, for example, and she's going to post about us. And maybe we don't know the attribution or the lift that we're going to get because of that, but we just want to have alignment there. What we're doing is letting brands basically at scale hire lots of people and micro-influencers across these different networks to post about the content that they want to be posted about. And it's all public. And so a brand will kind of create a campaign. If you're an influencer and you qualify for that, and you think you can create really awesome content and you want to compete for that business, you can go out and you can just post on it, right? And so what we do is we look at that post and we say, hey, Neil, I got 100 interactions out of 1,000 for this campaign, and that campaign was $1,000. You get $100. And so it's pretty simple, but the kind of gap that we're bridging here is the attribution level and layer of that process that traditionally is very hard to kind of figure out for brands on influencers. And so, we just launched this a couple weeks ago. We're out there in beta on it, and it's invite only, but the brands are pretty bullish on it, and the creators love it. And so we're having a lot of fun just getting into kind of a little bit of a new market here and, expanding what we're capable of doing.
And listening to you there and how passionate you are about this, I think it's easy to see how LunarCrush is increasingly being recognised for its cutting-edge analysis of social media intelligence and indeed market insights. But I'm curious, how do you see the role of social media data evolving in the cryptocurrency and indeed broader financial markets?
It's becoming a lot more relevant and important, I would say, almost to the point where when you're an investor or, you're a hedge fund or a large business that's out there and you're trying to understand the impact and the cross-section of financials and social media, once you step in that door, you can't step back out. It's a light that's kind of shown onto, your relevance out there on, in the world. Even kind of public relations departments and investor relations departments at a company, look at what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. We published a report after Silicon Valley Bank went down, and, the negative sentiment that we saw upon the announcement of the capital issuance that they had, which, for those of people that don't know, Silicon Valley Bank issued some capital on the public markets. It was a surprise that led to like a social media frenzy and craze that, potentially led to the demise and ultimately like the recapture of that bank and the support of that bank. And they're pretty lucky that the government stepped in, because otherwise, 3/4 of Silicon Valley and, half the Bay Area and a bunch of companies would have been defunct, and it would have been really, really bad. And so we say, hey, what if we could have notified Silicon Valley Bank immediately upon the massive negative sentiment, then they could have retracted maybe that issuance, right? And they could have walked that back, right? Like, what would that have been worth to them? Well, the bank was worth $25 billion, probably $25 billion. And so, for us, that's a downside protection on social media, because I think you can test all you want, some sort of announcement, but you're not going to know until it gets out into the market. And how do you gauge quickly whether or not that announcement or that thing that's out there or that news in the market is affecting what's going on? And so it's a huge thing. I mean, we started before, the whole Wall Street bets thing happened, with AMC and GameStop. That's, coming back around right now in the stock market. And, we kind of foresaw that retail could have a massive impact on financial markets. And people kind of didn't believe that, I think, until, the whole GameStop and AMC craze, and particularly GameStop and the bringing down of the hedge funds. And so for us, how did we, it's all about democratizing that opportunity for data, where it's, yes, we have an API that anyone can buy, and, hedge funds use that, and, big, like Coinbase uses that, and big companies use it. But, for, under $30 a month, you can also get access to all that data as a retail investor, which is a pretty cheap dollar amount, where normally that would take you, probably $500,000 to $1 million and a bunch of awesome developers, and you're still going to get maybe 5% of what we collect or less. And so it's really about democratizing opportunity and kind of bringing investors to a even playing field that like all these big guys have been kind of playing with for the last 15 years.
And speaking of that, before you came on the podcast, I was reading about how LunarCrush shifted the business model to a subscription-based revenue stream. What were the key drivers behind that strategic shift, and how has it impacted your growth and operations? What have you seen here?
Yeah, I mean, you're a startup and you're testing things.
Yeah.
Right. And you're trying to figure out what works and how it works. And, the crypto market has gone through, we just came out of almost like over 700 day bear market, and so in startup land, like it killed a lot of startups, right? And so for us, it was, staying alive, figuring out what works for us. We had an ads-based model for a long time, trying to kind of figure out like, hey, we have all this traffic, right? Tons of people are using this app, and how do we monetize that? And we, as much as like that was working, there was like this kind of internal thing also of like, no one likes ads. We don't like ads, and you go down that route to test things, but in all reality, it was like, we don't like this. We hate this actually. And so we said we'd rather, work with a smaller customer base that's really passionate about what we're doing. And that way the people that come in and they do pay, it's a pretty nominal fee compared to what else is out there that gives them this data. We can listen to those folks and say, hey, we can start to build down a direction for those people, versus when you have like a ton of users and they're looking at ads, it's a little bit tougher to kind of figure out your direction as a small company, I would say, or a big company can just monetize those numbers and they're kind of running down that path. And so for us, it was, hey, let's go to a subscription model, and our audience and the customer base has been really receptive to that. And we've been growing, pretty heavily in the last, 5 months after we've started that. And so it seems to be the right decision.
And another thing I was reading about you guys is how innovation is at the core of one of the core values of everything you do at LunarCrush. So on behalf of other founders listening, how do you foster an environment of innovation and development within your teams? And is there any advice that you would offer to somebody thinking of or trying to cultivate a similar culture? Because it's so much more than foosball tables and multicolored beanbags, isn't it?
Foosball is fun, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's much more than that. And it's, for us, we're a remote first company. We do get together. We've got a decent amount of people collected here in Orange County, California, but we are remote first. And I would say this actually stems a lot from hiring and the culture that you begin with. And then the people that you bring in will help you kind of continue that culture and amplify the innovation that's out there. If right now, it's 2024, like it's a year into AI, like if your team hasn't been tinkering and trying to figure out these different large language models and how AI is going to impact what's going on, and I would say kind of like readily already integrated many pieces of your business into AI, that would be a big red flag saying like, maybe I don't have the right culture of people that are out there kind of just like tinkerers and tinkering and trying to figure out the new technology and how it's going to make an impact. Because, the optimization and the efficiency that you get from having a team that knows how to interact with those tools is unbelievable. And the lift, the optimization lift that we've gotten in the last year has been unbelievable for building, for creative, for design, marketing, copywriting, like coding, our app and the things that we've built in. And so I'd say, if you're building a company and, you as a founder, especially in those early days, interview everyone for sure and make sure that it is a really good culture fit. And then ask those kind of hard questions, like, what do you do on your free time, right? Like, what are you kind of figuring out? And, unfortunately for a startup, especially the first like 10 hires, I'd say like work-life balance is not the same as like if you're working at like a huge company. It just isn't. At all. And so you definitely want to kind of find people that are really eager to learn. And, my kind of thing is like, I want to hire someone that I know one day I'm going to have to like fight tooth and nail to keep them on, because they're going to want to go start their own thing. And they're constantly trying to go do that as well. And I'm trying to hold on to that great talent and saying, here's how do I challenge you? How do I keep you motivated? How do I let you, work on the next big thing? And so like, that's the type of personality that I'm looking for. And then everything else from a culture perspective and innovation just stems from there.
And if we were having this interview 5 years ago, I would have asked you, when thinking about the future, what's your roadmap? That seemed to be the bog standard question for anybody in the Web3 space. But with the ongoing advancements in Web3 and increasing importance of digital ecosystems, where do you see LunarCrush in, let's say, 5 years from now? And I appreciate that's almost an impossible question with how much change has happened in the last 18 months to 2 years alone. But are there any other trends that you're excited about? Anything that you're chasing or watching with keen interest?
Yeah, and that is a tough question. And I do appreciate you understanding how hard it is, especially in our space, because, we talk about this all the time, especially if you're in the corporate world, you might have like a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
In crypto, there's no such thing as a 5-year plan. I mean, even 3 months out, you're planning, you're like, well, that's scrap.
Yeah.
No more like, of this layer one's gone. And so that's why you're reacting, I would say, a lot. But I'd say for us at LunarCrush and for the broader market, what I would really like to see in this next cycle in Web3 is a lot more utility and adoption of some of the apps that are out there, where people might not kind of realize that the underlying technology they're using is a blockchain, right? It's similar to web apps that are out there, and you might not realize that the app is sitting on top of Amazon Web Services cloud or, Google Cloud, or Azure or whatever else is out there, SoftLayer, I think IBM. And so you might not really realize what it's sitting on, but you're interacting with it. And so I think that's up to our community and the product teams in there to build really kick-ass tools that people want to use that offers some sort of utility that a Web2 app couldn't offer. And how do you onboard people and kind of, give them the sovereignty that they need once they understand how to use these wallets and how to interact with the blockchain. And so, for us, we've kind of always been expanding into different topics and different categories on LunarCrush as far as the data. And so we've got some really cool categories like, we have Premier League, we have the NFL, we've got the NBA, and, we haven't married those up with market data yet. Market data for us is, in cryptocurrencies is the price of cryptocurrencies or the price of stocks or the floor price of an NFT. But market data for sports might be the scores of those games, or it might be the betting odds of those games that are out there. And so what we've kind of found is as you marry up the market data and the social data, it's 1 + 1, equals 3. And so that's, we'll be looking very closely at, how do we bring, more of those people into our ecosystem. And naturally in our ecosystem, which is built on top of, Web3 tools and tokens and access tokens and earning tokens, these people will naturally kind of be brought into the industry that way and not feel like they were forced in, but feel like, oh, this is just a better way to interact with this app.
I love that. And we started the podcast talking about your origin story, and it feels like we've come full circle now. We're talking about the future. And of course, if I was to ask you to look back throughout your career, none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. So is there a particular person that you're grateful towards, or maybe they just spent a little time with you, invested that time, or helped you get you where you are? Who is that person? We'll give them a little shout out and a little thank you today. But who would it be and why?
I mean, man, there's a lot of people that I would give a shout out to. I mean, I obviously I've got a shout. If I got to shout out one person, it's got to be the support of my wife.
Yeah.
And her ability to deal with, some of those really late nights, especially with moments with young kids and, being a team together. And I try to always communicate when, I think times are going to get a little bit harder, a little bit rougher, if I can kind of see the future a little bit, which I think helps us prepare together for like the road and the battle ahead. And, then there's so many other people that have helped along the way, from different coaches to friends to colleagues, that just kind of support you, and they understand that you're on a really long journey, and, it's up to a group of people, not just one.
What a perfect answer. Your bed is safe this evening. You won't get into any trouble there. But for anyone listening, you've got a very passionate community out there, and anyone listening wants to join that community, find out more information, contact you or your team. What's the best starting point for all things LunarCrush?
I mean, find us on X, on Twitter, and it's just at LunarCrush. We're posting 20, 30 times a day, and that's kind of the place where we go for our company announcements and tons of fun insights about the market that we're constantly posting out there to the world as well. So if you want to learn a little bit more about social media and, the markets that move at the speed of social, find us at LunarCrush.
Well, I love everything that you're doing here, especially how you transform the business model from this ads-based revenue stream to subscription-based model. And as a result, I was reading before you came on, catapulted the company to the top 10% of the fastest growing SaaS businesses. Incredible achievement on its own, but also with the LunarCrush Earn, innovative platform designed to connect brands and creators further expanding your company's reach. It feels like an incredibly exciting time for you. So I'd love to stay in touch with you, maybe get you back on later in the year. As you said, this space moves so fast right now, so it'd be great to see how things progress. But more than anything, thanks for sharing the story today.
Thanks so much, Neil.
So as we wrap up the conversation with Joe, I think it's clear that LunarCrush is at the forefront of transforming how we understand and interact with social media data in the financial world. From surviving that prolonged crypto bear market to innovating with new platforms that connect brands with creators, I think Joe's journey underscores the importance of resilience, passion, and forward thinking in the tech industry. And looking ahead, the potential for Web3 apps, seamless user experiences without the need for blockchain knowledge is something I find particularly exciting as well. But hey, what are your thoughts on the future of social media analytics and investment decisions? Whether that be in crypto or traditional finance, I'd love to hear your perspectives today. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilCHughes. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for joining us today as well, and stay curious, keep exploring the possibilities of technology, but more than anything, thank you for listening today. And until next time, don't be a stranger.